Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
Well, we have a special episode for you on a special day. Once again, it is Mother's Day. I would say Happy Mother's Day, Craig, but you're not a mother.
I'm a bad mother.
You a bad mother. Shut your mouth. Well, we do want to say, at least I want to say, Happy Mother's Day to the important and wonderful mothers in my life, the mother of my son, and my own mom, of course, who went through quite a bit to raise me. We just love spending this time today, paying tribute to our mothers by showing motherly figures in horror films. I think last year, maybe 2 years ago, we actually did Mother's Day, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a notorious and cheap trauma-produced film, but it didn't turn out too bad. This is a modern film from 2013, and it is called Mama, produced by Guillermo Del Toro, and directed by a guy named Andy Muschietti from a 3-minute short that he did that got the attention of Guillermo Del Toro and said, hey, why don't I help you expand this into a larger movie, which he did. And this is what we have, Mama. I suggested this PG-13 film today simply because I was looking at lists of potential films for Mother's Day, and this one came up. But otherwise, I had never seen it before, and I actually hadn't heard it before. How about you, Craig?
Oh, yeah, I've seen it. In fact, when you recommended it, I told you that I had just rewatched it a couple of weeks ago, randomly, because again, as always...
In the spirit?
Well, no, I was just going through streaming services looking for something to watch, and I was looking at HBO Max, and it was there.
Man, you have all the streaming services, my man.
I do. I'm going to be in debtor's prison soon, I'm sure.
They nickel and dime you to death, right? It's like, only $5 here, only $6 there. And pretty soon you're spending $100. Like, why did I cut cable?
Yeah, I know. Like, I can afford $5 a month. That's less than one meal at McDonald's. But then, yeah, like now I've got like 15 streaming services. Anyway, whatever. So I had recently rewatched it, but I was glad to watch it again. I've actually been familiar with this for a long time because I was familiar with the original short. I've told you before and our listeners before that every October I do a horror unit with my senior class, and we read stuff, obviously, because it's a literature class, but I take one day when I show them shorts online, and this is one of the ones that I show them, and it's good. It's creepy, it's atmospheric, it's recreated almost exactly in this movie, but it is very, very brief, and there's no context. It's just a creepy little, minute and a half or 3-minute standalone thing. But it's atmospheric. It's atmospheric, and it's creepy, and then they made a whole movie out of it, and it's this one, and that's what we're talking about.
I should have had you do the intro. You're so good at it.
I'm very eloquent.
Yeah, I can tell. The movie kicks off pretty simply enough. And actually, I think the whole movie is very stylistic. It's shot really well. It has very good color dynamics in it. There's a kind of a bleak scene where we just see a car with its door open, sitting by the side of a house, and we hear over the radio, it sounds like there's been a shooting and somebody has left the scene of the shooting and someone is missing. And pretty soon we see two girls in a bedroom. One is Victoria and one is Lily, and they are 3 and 1 year old, respectively.
Adorable.
Very
so
adorable.
This is the first time, so I watched this with headphones this time around. Did you hear what was going on the radio?
Yeah, I did. I mean, most of it. Yeah, it was. They were talking about the shooting, right?
Yeah, I think this is the first time that I'd ever paid attention to that, but it's important.
It is. Yeah. It definitely sets the context for the scene. The father of these two girls, whose name is Jeff, I believe, comes stumbling in and upstairs and says, "Girls, we got to go. We got to go." And he just grabs them and leaves. And they ask, "Where's mommy? Where's mommy?" And they say, "Well, mommy's not here."
Well, and we had already heard a gunshot.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. What we heard on the radio was that there had been some kind of market crash or something. And some stockbroker or partner in some firm or something had gone nuts and had killed a couple of people in his office. And then as all this progresses, as we're watching it, the dad has the radio on.
Yeah.
It's him. And what's happened is that he has apparently
gone nuts
due to some failure with his business or whatever. He's lost his mind, and he's killed his partners, and apparently he's killed his wife, and now he's driving his girls out.
It's weird, right? It's an odd choice. Like, he doesn't just come home and shoot the girls and go. He comes home, shoots his wife, and then grabs the girls, puts them in a car, and takes off down the road.
Yeah, down this snowy road, and it's really, it's treacherous, and he's driving too fast, and the little girls are in the back, and the younger one is only 1. She can't even talk. The older one is 3. And this is the first time that I was watching this closely. Like, I've seen it more than once, but this is the first time I was watching it closely, and just paying closer attention to it made the tension that much higher, because these little girls are scared. And the older one is like, "Daddy, you're driving too fast." And she says it a couple of times, and at one point her dad turns around and yells at her.
Yeah, shut
in
up.
anger. Yeah, I mean, very, very angry. And then he loses control of the car, and they crash, and they're walking through the woods, and they end up finding, this abandoned cabin in the woods. And what really struck me, like, he's clearly lost his mind, and it seems like he's kind of tortured about what his next step is going to be, but it becomes apparent that he's going to kill these girls, and I assume himself.
Yeah.
But what really kind of broke my heart about it this time, what made it so sad, and ultimately, like, watching this movie this time, I looked at it kind of as more than just a horror movie. It's really it's tragic. Like,
very tragic.
There's so much tragedy and sadness in this movie that I really hadn't paid attention to before. And what really kind of got to me this time, the tragedy in this moment, is these little girls love their dad.
Yeah. And
trust their dad. The older one, who can speak, keeps every time she talks to him, it's always something, daddy, daddy, daddy. Like, that's messed up. They love him, they trust him, they have absolutely no idea what's going on. They're terrified, but they trust their dad.
Yeah, and it's I've said it before, but I do tend to see movies slightly differently, or at least they hit me emotionally a little differently, since I have a 5-year-old. And I think it's simply because I hear questions, very innocent but very important questions from him all the time. He doesn't understand life yet. He doesn't understand relationships and things like that yet. So, for example, when we had the COVID situation going on and we were separated, for 9 months, it was, he was asking a lot of questions. Oh, why can't daddy be here? Or why can't we just go to China? And, he could accept the answers, but it's interesting to hear how his mind is working and what answers he needs, and what questions he has and how he perceives things. And I mean, so I think in a situation like this, I was just really breaking for those kids, being whisked away by their dad in the car, really not knowing what's going on. But, they're appropriately, like, not freaking out.
Right.
Older kids would freak out.
Right.
Younger kids are just confused, but they're used to being confused because life is confusing for them. So they just kind of go along with it, which is also really sad. And I did not see coming the fact that he was going to kill them. I thought the whole reason he didn't shoot them right there in the house like he did his wife is because he had some plan with them. And I think maybe he originally did, but maybe he was thinking twice about it.
Yeah, I don't think he had a plan, but I don't think that I think he was irrational, but I don't think that he had planned to kill them. I think it was an impetuous decision he made in a desperate moment.
I think you're right, and I mean he certainly didn't plan to go to the cabin. Well, they're crashed.
It was an accident
by the side of the road and stumbled into this place.
Yeah,
and then it's just an awful scene where he is. You see what's probably going to happen. He's got the gun in his hand. She's like, "What is that, Daddy?" And he just puts his hand on her face, and he's kind of crying. And he turns her around and says, "The girls have been saying, by the way, that there's a woman outside, and we have seen like some movement that's a little spooky." And then she turns around and looks outside, and he raises the gun like he's going to shoot her. And before he can, these supernatural arms come out of the sky behind him, the ceiling, grab him and pull him away. And the girl turns around and sees this happen.
But he had told her to take off her glasses. She wears glasses. And he had told her to take them off because I don't think that he wanted her to see anything. After she took off her glasses, that's when he pulled out the gun. And she said, "Daddy, what is that?" And he said, "Don't worry about it," or something like that. I think that he didn't want her to see.
Oh, I missed
that.
But
I also think that this is important because when she turns around, this ghostly, I mean, this movie doesn't hide anything.
No.
It's a ghost movie.
Yep.
Or some sort of supernatural entity. I mean, we find out it's a ghost, but some sort of supernatural entity. And we see it, right there in the very beginning. It's this woman, ghostly, earth tones, CGI. The CGI is not bad.
Yeah.
It's fine. I mean, it's obviously CGI, but it's fine. Grabs him, lifts him up, breaks his neck. And she sees all of this, but she sees it out of focus. And for the rest of the movie, which, obviously time passes. We jump to 5 years later and time passes, but we come back to these girls. Anytime that Mama, the ghost, is around, the girl takes off her glasses. I don't know if it's
I didn't catch that.
I don't know if it's because that's how Mama is familiar to her. Like she had only ever seen her in soft focus before. But at another point late in the movie, the girl is wearing her glasses and Mama takes them off of her.
It's a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like either Mama doesn't want her to see. I don't know, but I just felt like that. I think it's important as the relationship between the two of them, the fact that she only ever sees her in blur, in soft focus. I think that's kind of important because it's almost like a metaphor. Like when she comes back to civilization and she gets glasses again and she can physically see clearly, then she can kind of see things more clearly.
Yeah.
And that's important as far as their relationship is concerned.
And it sets up a contrast between her and her younger sister. Which is also important to the movie, and also a really poignant and nice touch. These could have been twins. They could have been about the same age.
Right.
But because this girl is so young, they basically end up staying in this cabin for like 5 years.
For 5 years, yeah.
And there's a little scene where they're sitting by the fire and a little cherry rolls towards them that they pick up and eat that, has obviously been delivered by this supernatural entity. And then 5 years later, after a credit sequence of kids' drawings, we are...
Which I thought was just fantastic because it tells their story. The children's drawings fill in the gap of what's happened in these 5 years. In these stick figure, basically, drawings, you can see that sometimes the girls were scared, but sometimes they were happy. And playing and doing things, and there's this Mama figure in some of the illustrations, and there are there's one illustration where the girls are scared and they're being like menaced by wild dogs or something, but then the next picture shows the dogs all bloody and dead and they're happy, so this spirit or whatever it is has been protecting them, caring for them, at least enough to keep a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old alive for 5 years. I mean, that's a big deal.
In an abandoned cabin out in the middle of the woods.
In the woods, right.
Which, to be fair, seems to be so easy to find. I can't believe nobody's found this before.
I know. Kind of silly.
Anyway, that's one of the groaners, I think. I mean, I really had to suspend my disbelief for a few things. There's a few plot holes. Yeah, in it, but...
Well, I guess, in theory, they had no idea where the dad took them. In theory.
Yeah, like nobody tracked the car or anything like that,
right.
Presumably.
But then it cuts to 5 years later, and we find out that the dad's twin brother, Lucas, has been continuing to fund a search for these girls and his brother, I guess, because they just disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to them. 5 years later, he's still paying people to look around. And we just happen to come back to them when these guys that he's paying, these, I don't know, woodsy guys.
Bursey.
They first find the car, which again, right, like you have to suspend your disbelief. Like wherever this is, how far could it have gone off the road that somebody wouldn't have found it in 5 years?
Yeah.
But
it's right
whatever.
there.
They first find the car, and then they find the cabin. And I really like this scene because they go in there, and of course it's all dark, and they're looking around, but you see the girls moving around in the shadows before, the characters see them, and they're feral. And I thought that this was played really well, and I don't know how much of it was done with CGI or how much of it was done with the child actors, but they move around like animals and on all fours.
It's spooky.
It is very spooky.
And they're super skinny. Yeah.
Super skinny and very fast and agile and
dirty, hairy,
hissing and growling, and I don't know how realistic it is, but it looked like it's spooky, and just that idea of feral children is kind of a spooky thing. But of course they get them and they bring them back and they notify the uncle Lucas, who has a girlfriend named Annabel.
Yeah, and Annabel, we're introduced to her sitting on the toilet checking out her pregnancy test, and really very happy that she's not pregnant. And I thought, okay.
Oh, absolutely, 100% relieved.
They're really setting this up, right? It's a bit on the nose.
It is.
Thank you, God. Sweet.
Hey, guess who's not pregnant? What is wrong with you?
Last payment didn't clear.
So there's a problem with the bank, or?
The money's gone.
I picked B.
That is the correct answer.
Hey, look, babe. It's your brother. You want to spend all your money trying to find him? It's okay with me. It's cheaper than therapy. And so am I.
And Annabelle is kind of, like a rocker girl. Like, she's in a band. She's in a rock band. She's got tattoos up and down her arms and jet black hair. And she's played by Jessica Chastain, who is one of the only actors that I recognize. So I apologize if there are other, famous actors in this movie that you like that I don't talk about, because she's one of the only ones that I recognize. And she was the first and only choice for this role. She's good. Jessica Chastain is a good actress.
She is.
And this is, it's just a different role than I've ever seen her in, but every role I've seen her in, she's been different. She's versatile. She ended up working with Andy Muschietti again on the It remake.
Yep.
She was in It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 as the older Beverly Marsh. She got a lot of acclaim for playing Tammy Faye Baker in The Eyes of Tammy Faye, which I've started watching, and she is quite good in that. I just think that
Zero Dark 30 came out the year before this.
The same year.
She was in Interstellar the next year. Yeah. Crimson Peak. Oh, remember Crimson Peak.
Yes.
Oh, we like
yeah,
that
and she
one,
was
too.
good in that.
Yeah.
She's a very talented actress, and she's good in this movie, and she plays... I like it when actors can play a character who, on paper, is unlikable, but you like them anyway. You know, like, at least in the beginning, and I would say that she has character... She certainly has an arc. She has character development. But on paper, you know, in the beginning, she is thrilled to find out she is not pregnant, and she is not really interested in being a mother or having a family at all. And this is thrust upon her. And she even has a conversation with the female lead singer of her band saying, you know, I didn't even want a family. I certainly didn't want a f***ed up family. And she's like, and I didn't even get to f*** them up. Like, they came to me that way.
It's pretty hilarious.
And her friend is like, well, leave him. And she's like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't do that to him. Like, apparently she loves him so much and knows how important this is to him that, like it or not, she's in it. And she's going to do it.
That's important, right? I mean, it shows that she's not just kind of a self-centered asshole, only out for herself. That's why she doesn't want to be a mom, because she doesn't want to have any responsibility or, you know, whatever. Like, I'm not saying that's the reason you don't become a mom. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying,
right?
Like,
there's lots of reasons. Sure,
it provides the balance, right? Where, oh, okay, yeah, she's super happy. She doesn't have kids. She doesn't want these kids. She has the opportunity to go, but she's a nice gal, and so. Obviously, they're setting this up to put her in the mother role, which she ends up doing. I was just going to mention, by the way, because it means nothing to me, but Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, who played Lucas in this, I've never watched Game of Thrones, but he's Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones. So that probably means something to the rest of the 99% of the rest of the universe that's seen Game of Thrones and not me.
Right, and he's handsome and charming, and you know, I there was nobody in this movie who I thought was subpar in terms of acting. I thought that the acting was
great.
Yeah, it was great. And even these little girls now who have grown up, they end up in the hands of this psychologist, I guess, named Dreyfus. I guess he's in charge of their case or whatever. He tells Lucas and Annabel that the older girl, Victoria, has managed to retain some language, and they really think that with just a little bit of help, she'll be able to get everything back. The other little girl, Lily, was only 1 year old when she went out there, so she has very little language, or social skills. I mean, she is quite literally feral, and throughout really the most of the movie, like, she's capable of walking on 2 feet, but she seems to prefer, when she's comfortable, she walks on all fours.
Right.
And she's capable of language, but she doesn't say very much. And I just read this morning that this young actress didn't speak English.
It worked out well for her role, didn't it?
It does. It works out perfectly for the role. But it's good. It's effective. I actually think that it works really well because, as it turns out, we already know this, but the characters come to find out very slowly over the course of the film that they were raised by this ghost lady, and the 1 year old, that's all she's ever known, ever. And so she clings to it far more fiercely than her sister does. And that's ultimately important too.
Well, and that's the contrast, I was talking about that, like you said, is very important. And I also think it's a very poignant moment in there where Lucas is approaching her inside this facility. Now, also, I guess this is just a movie thing, right? But my mom used to work at a psychiatric facility. I don't remember them having a room that was dressed up like a bedroom with a two-way mirror, so they could just throw kids in there and see how they're going to act. But anyway, they're in there, right? And the doctor is talking about the differences between the two girls. And Lucas comes in, and of course, Lily is running away from him. And also, Victoria seems hesitant. but he gives her glasses. He's got like another pair of her glasses, and he puts them on her, and she sees him for the first time, and she goes, "Daddy." And I just wanted to cry.
It broke my heart.
Just broke my heart. And he's like, "I'm sorry, I'm not your dad. I'm your Uncle Lucas, remember?" And she just hugs him.
And keeps saying daddy.
And,
like,
and she's old enough, right, to have the memory of her actual mother, to have the memory of her real dad. And this guy's his twin, he looks just like him.
And she's touching his face, like, and these girls have not had any human contact through all of their formative years up to this point. And I just, it just felt so natural. Like, I just believed that, when this girl walks up to this man and recognizes him as she probably would, it's her dad's twin brother. They're not played by the same actor. They're not identical twins, but brothers nonetheless. And she just reaches out and strokes his face, and it's almost like sense memory, and it comforts her, and she embraces him. Oh,
that's amazing,
man.
Well, the Dr. Gerald, we see a court scene. I think it's like 90 days later.
Your Honor, Victoria and Lily Desage were found in deplorable conditions. Isolated, starved. They feared and distrusted all physical contact. Their emotional growth was clearly compromised by their abandonment. In order to survive such extreme isolation, the girls created an imaginary guardian, a parent figure to feed them, sing to them, protect them. They called her Mama.
At the same time, and they're talking about custody of the girls in front of the judge, and there's this woman who just kind of comes out of nowhere, and I didn't think this character was at all important to the story. I think
she's totally ancillary.
Completely cut out. She comes from nowhere. You barely see her, and then she does nothing really important in the whole movie, but create this for a moment, this bit of drama where it's the aunt, it's the dead mom's sister who wants custody of the girl.
I think actually it's the dead mother's aunt.
Oh, you think so?
So it would be the girls. Yeah, I think so. But she wants the girls. And maybe she is the mom's sister. I don't know. I thought it was the mom's aunt, but whatever. It doesn't matter. I understand why she would want them. And she argues in court that she would be more fit to keep them because Lucas just lives in a small apartment and
he's an artist, so he's poor,
right? And his girlfriend's just in a band and blah, whatever,
right?
And the psychologist Dreyfus is frankly corrupt. Like, they don't really treat him as a villain, but they could have because he's corrupt. He tells Lucas and Annabel, the truth of the matter is she probably would be better off with Jean. But
I want to study them.
I want to study them.
It's like Alien. He was in Aliens, by the way.
Oh, I didn't know that. He basically what he says is it's really up to me. Like, whatever recommendation I make, the judge is going to go with. And he's like, I would lean towards her. However, I don't want them going across the country either. So, if you will agree to live in this nice suburban home owned by the university for the purpose of case studies. Okay.
It's about as realistic as this. This university must have a hell of a lot of money.
If you'll agree to live there and give me access to the girls, then I will recommend you for custody. And Annabelle is torn. She doesn't want to go live in suburbia and be a soccer mom. But she knows it's important to Lucas, and so they agree to do it.
Yeah. At this point, I have to say, the movie is very stylized in the way it does color. Whenever Lucas is around, the girls, and just around period, you get this very warm, yellow, sepia-toned image of the picture. Whenever Annabelle is around, starting from when we see her rehearsing in this little, rehearsal room or whatever with a fluorescent light or whatever. No matter where she is, whether she's in the house, whether she's outside, it's green. It's like puke green, like ugly fluorescent lighting type thing. It's sort of like the teal and orange, except it's like
Right.
gross green and orange. And I thought that was a really interesting motif that they had going through the movie. So even when they get to the house, and Annabelle has her moments where she's alone with the girls, but she's not comfortable with them. She's not sure what to do with them. She does what she can, but she's just kind of like, whatever, she's got to go through the motions. It's like washing the dishes or doing the laundry.
Right. Well, and I give the character, I mean, I've already said Jessica Chastain, great actress. I give the character props because she really tries.
Yeah.
And they really make a point of pretty much every time you see her in the house, she's doing something incredibly domestic.
Yes.
Like, she's always doing laundry or doing the dishes or cleaning up, like always. And
it's always that green wash over it, by the way, always.
And it doesn't feel heavy-handed. It kind of feels realistic. I mean, that's what, especially since, there's a scene where Dreyfus hypnotizes Victoria, which is, it just kind of stuck in, but it is important. But she gives the exposition. She tells Mama's story.
It was a long time ago. A lady ran away from a hospital for sad people. She took her baby. They jumped into the water.
How could you know that story, Victoria? Did Mama tell you that story?
She showed me.
How?
In a dream.
They all move in together in the house. I mean, it's a beautiful house if you want to, live in suburbia. And there's a lot that goes on, and we can come back to it. I was trying to get caught up, but the point is, eventually, Lucas is taken out of the picture.
Yeah.
The girls get back to the house. Then, we see strange things start going on, like the electricity is flickering. Lily is creeping around the house weirdly on all fours. There are weird, like, mold or mildew spots on the walls that, like, these moths are coming out of and stuff. And at one point, Annabelle hears something in the night, and she sends Lucas out to investigate it, and he sees one of these spots on the wall, and he sees a moth come out of it, but then Mama busts out of it and pushes him over the banister on the second level, and so he falls down the stairs.
I thought he was going to die.
And is unconscious. I kind of thought so, too. I almost feel like that would have been too mean.
Yeah. It would have been a shocker.
Well, and I think that logistically it wouldn't have made sense, because if he had died, they would have taken the girls from her.
Yeah, that's true.
The girls would have gone to a relative. But he's not dead, but he is in a coma. And I appreciate the reality of the character, because Annabelle is like, well, she talks to the psychologist and she's like, well, what do we do now? And he's like, what do you mean? She's like, about the girls. And he's like, well, you have to keep them. If you don't keep them, then Jean will get them. And even when Lucas comes out of the coma, he'll never get them back. And she says, that's not fair. Mm-hmm. This isn't my job. Mm-hmm. And she's right. It's not. It's not her job. It's not her responsibility. But apparently she loves Lucas enough that she is willing to make that sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And it certainly is a sacrifice. I mean, it would be a sacrifice to care for anybody else's children.
It's a sacrifice caring for your own children.
Right.
Let me tell you.
But these kids have issues. But she has to take it on, and she does. And she tries. It is hard. And you can see the frustration in her. It's terribly frustrating, but she does it.
I think it's important to point out, and this, the movie could have gone this way, and I'm really glad that it didn't. It really stayed true to her character and her motivations. She's not trying to, like, bond with the girls,
Not really.
She's not trying to have these moments where she's trying to get closer with them to make her life easier. She's really just trying to get things done and trying to keep them alive from one day to the next. And that's... I appreciated that the movie didn't get sappy and weird like that because, of course her character arc, it was set up from the beginning. She doesn't want to be a mom. She doesn't, all this stuff. And of course, by the end of it, spoiler alert, she suddenly has these motherly instincts that awaken in her or whatever, at least towards these girls. She feels a bond with them now. And it's a natural evolution. But it could have been so much sappier.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And it absolutely was not. And so I really appreciated that about the movie. The characters they felt very real. Their motivations felt pretty real. Except for the one-note aunt, who pops in and out and is just a douche the whole time. And the kind of evil doctor who... He wasn't that evil.
He's ambitious.
He's a plot device. He's a plot device to advance our understanding of what's going on. He hires this woman, or gets this woman who either works at the university or something like that to investigate the story that the girls tell about the woman who jumped. This woman comes in and basically says, well, I've investigated all the asylums and things like that, and I haven't found anything. But there's this one that closed in like 1868. That there was this patient named Edith Brennan, and you should look at her story and her files. And so that's where we see. And, this happens pretty early in the movie. Mm-hmm. Like you said, just the way that there's no question at the beginning that this is supernatural and that there's a ghost. We see the ghost full on pretty early. We're not even a third of the way through the movie, and this whole investigation bit is pretty much done for us. Like, there are just some very minor details that we don't know. But if you've ever seen a ghost story, you know what this is all about, right? It's this ghost who was taking care of the girls, but she's restless spirit for some reason, and there's something that has to be done in order to set her soul at ease, and she's got her own motivations. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, like, just to jump the gun a little bit on why I thought this movie was just kind of is it was just so formulaic like that.
Yeah, that's true.
And not only was it formulaic, but it showed its cards so early. So by this point, a third of the way through the movie, everything had kind of been laid out. So I was just waiting for all the proper characters realize what needs to be done, and then they discover what that is and do it. Mm-hmm. And then that even happens kind of early, too. The doctor's on his own little path here. He's investigating this. He's talking to the girls. He's got the hypnosis thing, which I thought was a little contrived, but okay, whatever, to pull information out of the girls. And then this woman comes back to him at some point later and says, I've got more information, something you need to see. And she brings him into this sort of Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark style, like government facility where I was expecting her to like pass right by the do not open arc. Great.
Right.
Floor to ceiling.
Just rows upon rows of like 30 feet high shelves, right?
And she pulls off and she says,
"Do you believe in ghosts?"
I can't say that I do.
When a corpse is left out, the elements wither it, desiccate it, twisting it into a distorted figure that's barely recognizable as a human being. A ghost is an emotion bent out of shape, condemned to repeat itself time and time again, until it rights the wrong that was done.
What's this?
The wrong.
Which is a summary of basically every ghost story we've ever seen, and apparently a direct quote from two of Guillermo Del Toro's previous movies. One of his previous movies, and then Crimson Peak, which comes later. So she pulls off the shelf. She says, "These are small remains.
This is the wrong.
This is the wrong.
Like the wrong that needs to be correct it.
Yeah.
And I was a little confused at what was going on at this point.
At this point, I was like, oh, the mother, she jumped off with her baby, and now her baby was lost. These are the remains. You got to get the remains back to the ghost. I mean, isn't that like 80% of their stories? Like they're looking for somebody else's remains?
Yes, but I thought, and I don't know if I just missed something or if I misheard something or what, I thought it was Mama's ashes. Like, I thought that she needed to be laid to rest, and that's not what it is at all. So, and again, maybe I just missed something. I don't know. But things move. I was going to say they move pretty quickly. They actually don't.
No,
they move a little bit slowly, but we can talk about it quickly because not a whole lot happens. Like, obviously, Annabel is concerned, and weird things are going on. Like, we see, again, nothing secret. We see Mama playing with Lily.
Oh, that's such a great scene, too.
I did really like that scene. It's shot like down a hallway so that you can see on the right side of the screen, you can see into the girl's bedroom, but the left side of the screen is the hallway that Annabel is in. But so we can see both clearly, but Annabel has no idea what's going on in the room. And it's kind of like a will she, won't she see it kind of thing. But of course she doesn't.
The cool thing about it is that Lily is playing with a blanket. It's like somebody else who you can't see because they're further into the room is pulling on the blanket. She's yanking it around, and you would just assume that it's Victoria.
Right.
Except at some point, as, like you say, Annabelle's walking down the hall and you think she's going to turn the corner, Victoria shows up. So you're like, holy shit. And then when you look over in the room, suddenly can we see more of a shadow on the wall of the mother figure. And you realize what's going on. But they pull this trick too many times, honestly.
Yeah.
They pull this trick so many times that you can see it coming. Like at least 3 times in this movie is a situation where you think it's the 2 girls, but then you see Victoria, and it turns out that it's Lily and Mama, who you thought was Lily and Victoria.
It happens a lot. And there are a lot of times when like Annabelle hears weird things through the vents and like goes and surprises the girls playing, and like they're obviously surprised and like they've been caught doing something, but for whatever reason Mama isn't visible. Like I was paying closer attention this time, that time when she thinks that she hears, well, the girls sing this, they don't really sing, they kind of hum this melody, and at one point Annabelle hears them through the vents, but she hears a voice singing with them that is not a child's voice, it's a woman's voice. And she walks to their room and she hears them playing, and she opens the door and they look like they've been caught, but Mama's not there, which I thought was really convenient. But if you pay attention, Lily is holding one end of that blanket and the other end of the blanket is trailing into the closet, like pointing, right, like she had, like Mama had just disappeared into the closet. But you're right, those types of things happen a lot until eventually Mama just makes herself known
all the time to everybody, every chance she can get. And this is the thing that with these ghost movies always kind of troubles me a little bit, especially with an aggressive ghost as this ghost turns out to be, who's protective of these girls. Why not from the very get-go did she just sweep them back away? Why is she dicking around in this house with them and appearing and playing and all this stuff? I mean, I'm trying to think, oh, well, was she holding back, thinking that, you know, all she really cares about is that these girls are taken care of, and so is she sort of testing the caretakers? And once sort of Annabelle proves herself that she can be a worthy mother to these kids, then she's going to retreat, you know? That doesn't turn out to be the case.
No.
So I'm just really kind of left wondering why Mom is just futzing around so much, and why she, you know, what we get at the end of the movie didn't happen like much earlier.
Right. Well, you know, I don't know. I can't explain it other than that this ghost has apparently been living in this cabin by herself since the late 1800s, and now the only two... Frank, what it comes down to basically is that this ghost has adopted them. You know, like they call her Mama. She cared for them. And that's part of what makes the movie kind of tragic. Like, obviously, the Mama spirit is dangerous and the villain of the story, but her story is tragic too. Yeah. And she got, she lost her own child. As it turns out, the psychologist at first tells Annabel that he thinks that Victoria has dissociative personality disorder and that she is Mama. I don't know if he really believes that or not, but that's what he tells her. He does more research and ends up, and we actually end up seeing this. I guess Mama reveals it to Annabel the same way that she had revealed it to Victoria through a dream. She had been in an institution, Mama had, and she, I guess, had a baby, and she stole her baby, killed a nurse or something, and ran, and then was pursued by men, and chased to the edge of this cliff. And I guess that what she decided was that she would rather die with her baby than go back and have to give her baby up or whatever. So she jumped off this cliff. What we see is from her perspective. She jumps and she has her baby, but right before she crashes into the water, she looks at her arms and her baby is gone. And that seems like that is why she is a wandering spirit. Like, she doesn't know what happened to her baby. And Victoria tells Annabel at some point, she wandered all around the woods looking for her baby, but she never found it. And I guess, just being this lost wandering spirit, then these two girls showed up and they kind of took the place of her baby. We find out that as she had been falling from this cliff, there had been a branch like protruding out of it, and the baby's swaddling had got caught in it and had been suspended there, and that's why she lost her.
Yeah. I have to say, another thing that kind of bothered me about the movie from a logical perspective was that too much of the information is revealed to the characters through these visions, Yeah. They have a dream, they have a vision, and now they know what they have to do. It's a convenient plot device, and it's very typical of these kinds of stories. But in this case, there wasn't really a motivation for it, because normally the ghost is revealing things to the characters in visions so that they can get the characters to fulfill their need, Mm-hmm. In this case, the ghost is just completely antagonistic towards these people, and she's going to try to kill them both later.
Yeah, it's a little muddled, right? Like, why is she revealing this stuff to Annabel? Because Victoria is scared. Like, she is afraid that Mama's going to get jealous and hurt Annabel. Mm. And she rejects affection from Annabel because she's like, no, you can't do that. It's going to make her jealous and she's going to hurt you. And at this point, I did like at this point that Lily continues to embrace Mama.
Yes.
But that Annabel is clearly trying to pull away. Mm-hmm. And at one point, Lily wakes up in the night. I think Mama's like beckoning her or something. And all she ever says really in the whole movie is, Victoria, come, Mama. Yeah. And at one point she goes to go out the window to follow Mama, and she says that, and Victoria says, Victoria, stay. And she's crying. And I do think it's hard for her, and I really actually like mm-hmm. that element of the story. It is hard for her. I think that she wants to embrace this more normal life because she kind of remembers a normal mm-hmm. life. And I think that she really recognizes that Annabel cares for them and is taking care of them. And she wants to embrace that relationship, but it's hard for her to let the other one go, mm-hmm. especially since her little sister is still embracing that. And that's really basically what it comes down to. At some point, Lucas has a vision of his brother who says, save my girls, go to the cabin. whatever. And then he wakes up from his coma. The stupid Aunt Jean visits and, like, threatens to challenge them for custody because Lily has bruises on her face or something. And Annabelle's like, yeah, they're kids. They get bruises, which is totally true. And eventually Mama completely reveals herself to Annabelle, and there's a little bit of a confrontation. Meanwhile, Aunt Jean has come over. I'm not really sure why. I'm not sure if she's, like, sleuthing.
And why is she
or...
if she's breaking into the house somehow? Like, what the hell? It's the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I didn't get
I have
that.
no idea what she's doing.
It's because the plot required it.
The plot required it, and you said that she's pointless. She is pointless, except for the girls needed a ride to the cabin. So Aunt Jean showed up so that Mama could possess her for long enough to drive them, apparently, out to the cabin. And the possessed Jean was very frightening. I feel like this is as good a time as any to say that Mama is played by a man, Javier Botet. And apparently this guy has some sort of disorder that makes him very, very thin, and he has really long limbs and really long fingers. So he has, I mean, if you look at his IMDb picture, he looks like a handsome guy, but apparently he has, kind of a curious physique. Yeah. And he's able to do this, and he's played these types of roles before. He was in the It remake too. He was the leper. And he's also played a ghostly woman in some other movie. So this is kind of his thing, and he does it well. He's really good. He's very creepy. He can move in really unnatural ways. Again, I don't know how much of that is CGI. But anyway, they all end up at the cabin. I mean, it's really kind of silly that they all end up there at the exact same time. And Mama has the girls out on the cliff, and Lucas and Annabelle run to the cliff, and Mama is able to somehow subdue them. Like, I feel like she reaches into Lucas's chest, and it's almost like she's squeezing his heart or something. He falls to the ground, and I didn't know if he was supposed to be dying or what was going on. But she also touches Annabelle, and Annabelle falls to the ground, and the girls start walking hand in hand with Mama to the cliff, and Victoria keeps turning back to Annabelle and saying, "Annabelle, sleep," because Mama keeps trying to put her to sleep, but Annabelle won't. Like, she won't give up, and she keeps waking up, and she keeps crawling towards them until eventually they're near the edge of the cliff, but Victoria stops because Annabelle is clinging to her robe. And I think that what was going on here was that Victoria was going to go with Mama because that would be what was best for everybody. She didn't want to see Lucas and Annabelle get hurt, so she was just going to go. But Annabelle's persistence, I think, convinced her, this woman loves me and I want to stay with her.
Yeah.
And so she does. She lets go. And again, the ghost is the villain, but I feel bad for her. Like, it's sad.
That's kind of an interesting twist that happens there, where they are on the peak of the mountain, and she is leading the girls away, and they present her with the remains of her child.
Right.
And she turns around, and it seems like everything's going to wrap up. But because Lily calls out to her, Mama, she turns around and kind of realizes, look, I can have this bag of bones, or I can have this other girl,
Right. And she tosses the bones away. Like, she just hurls them away.
It's very complex, I think. I really like the human emotional aspect of this story. Just everything you described, everything we've talked about the relationship between children and their mothers, and the mother, this sort of motherly instinct or whatever, or how you can bond with people over time. Like, all of that was really convincing and nice. I felt like the ghost story aspect of it was pretty pedestrian. It wasn't stupid. It was just very paint by numbers and predictable. And quite frankly, there were a lot of things I didn't understand, a lot of plot holes. And I was just kind of waiting for that to wrap up. I think the movie could have been shorter because of it.
Yeah.
But what she ends up doing, I think, right, is she ends up taking Lily. And now I was a little surprised.
I was. And it's sad, but it almost like...
They make it seem so perfect, right?
Yeah, the way... Well, God, I mean, you're just torn because, Victoria has to say goodbye to her sister. And
right.
Annabel and Lucas, they don't have as close a bond with Lily, but there was actually a really, really powerful scene. Lily never bonded with anybody, and she never lost her kind of feral nature. She wouldn't sleep in a bed, she wouldn't sit in chairs. She only ate with her hands. Like, that never went away. But there was a moment when she had snuck outside to try to be with Mama, but she hadn't found Mama, and she had slept outside in the cold. And Annabelle had gone out and picked her up and brought her in. And this poor little girl is freezing, and she screams no and tries like an animal to scamper away. But Annabelle just holds her. And I mean, gosh. Yeah. This scene had to have been hard to direct and hard to act because this little girl was fighting to get away. And Jessica Chastain just had to hold her and wrap her arms and legs around her and restrain her, which is... I've had to do that. I've worked in special education with young kids, and I've had to restrain kids, and it's not easy, and it's emotional because... You're scared to death. You don't want to hurt them, but you know that you're doing it for their safety. That's what Annabelle does with this girl. And when she finally holds her there forcibly and is trying to comfort her, it's like Lily finally, for a moment, realizes this woman doesn't want to hurt me.
Yeah.
This woman cares about me. And you see it in her eyes. This little girl. Oh, man, I was so impressed at that performance. You see that moment where she realizes this woman's trying to help me.
And I thought that would be a turning point, but it turned out it just wasn't enough, right?
It just wasn't enough.
But that scene completely foreshadows what we see later on the cliff, right? What proves it to the kids is the determination and the care that the adult is showing them. But the reality is, for this 1-year-old, for this kid who was 1 year old when she was taken away, this is the only mother she's ever known. Is this ghost.
Right.
That's the difference between these two kids. So it's very fitting, really, when you think about it, that this girl is going to be happiest with her ghost mother, wherever ghost mother is going to take her.
Right.
And where ghost mother takes her is right off the edge of the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And that surprised me a bit, but they have this super stylized, rather touching scene where the mom sort of supernaturally wraps her up in this cloak as she dives off the cliff, and time just sort of slows down. And we get a look inside of this little wrapping that they're in as they're slowly descending. And Lily couldn't be happier. She just...
No, she's
got her hands...
She's at peace.
All over Mom's face. She's at peace. And the ghost mom is happy. Everything is fine. And they hit that branch on their way down, and they burst out into a bunch of moths.
Yep.
And then, of course... as the other three are embracing on the ledge, one of the moths flutters over and lands on Victoria's arm. And Victoria just says, "Lily?" And that moth sort of flits away. So,
and that's the end. And I thought that it was a sad ending. Like I said, the whole movie is tragic in a lot of ways. And the ending is sad. It is. I think it's satisfying, but it's sad. I was also left wondering what happens next.
Right?
Like
how are they going to explain
this
to everybody?
where did Lily go?
Mm-hmm.
Why is Aunt Jean dead? I just saw this morning that Mama 2 is slated. It was supposed to film, I think, in 2020, but of course then the world went to hell. And
oh, really? What happened in 2020, Craig?
So it's postponed apparently indefinitely, but Jessica Chastain was set to reprise her role. But I'm like, why?
They're in prison.
What's gonna happen?
They start out in prison because this girl's disappeared.
Is Mama gonna come back? I don't. That's stupid. That's actually one of the things that I liked about this movie was that it didn't just tie everything up with a nice, pretty bow. Things weren't perfect. The sisters were separated. The foster parents or whatever lost the girl. They didn't win, and nobody really won. But I almost feel like that's fitting. It's maybe in a ghost story, more realistic, whatever. But there's something satisfying about things not turning out perfectly.
Yeah, that's true.
Ultimately, I think it's a good movie. You're right. I mean, it's a pretty typical ghost story. But the performances were strong enough that I was invested in these characters. Now, the little girls I thought were fantastic. Jessica Chastain, I say this a lot, but it happens a lot. She had to carry this movie on her back. This movie was about her.
It really was. I mean, all the male characters really in this movie are sidelined.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're kind of one, like the doctor, the doctor's assistant has more humanity than the doctor does.
Yep.
And she's a woman. So I think that's kind of fitting maybe for the theme of the film. By the way, do you think that Annabelle wears the same Misfits shirt every day, or does she have a whole bunch of them in her closet and she just changes them out? I don't think
she probably wears the same one every day. She's that rock and roll.
I think that was her costume for the entire movie. I do not remember her wearing anything else. Even to court, I think she had that Misfits shirt on.
The whole moth thing I don't really get, but the moving through the walls was kind of cool, and it projected when she was going to appear or when she was nearby. My favorite one was when it actually looked really, really cool at one point when she sunk through the floor, and for a moment it was like she was in water, but just her eyes and the top of her head were above the floor, kind of looking at Annabelle. And then Aunt Jean just saw her hair moving, like just her hair was above the floor, moving around the floor and coming at her. Overall, the effects were good. Again, we're running long. I'm trying to recap, but I can't really think of much negative to say. I'm not a huge fan of CGI. I think that it definitely has its place, and you can do really cool things with it. But for me, for it to be effective, it has to look really good. And in this movie, I thought it looked good. I didn't think it looked really good. So that, I didn't absolutely love. But beyond that, I thought it was a good movie. I cared about the characters. You're absolutely right with the cinematography. They did have different motifs, with color and other visual cues that I thought were real. I think that Andy Muschietti is a fine director.
He's quite good.
Quite good. And I think that we'll be seeing a lot more from him.
He did, just to remind everyone, he did It, the new remakes of It as well. And I guess he's got The Flash in post-production. And
yeah, so overall, I think this is a good movie. I recommend it. It's spooky, it's atmospheric, it's pretty scary in parts. And the acting is good, the characterization is good. I liked it, and I didn't mind watching it a couple times in the last couple weeks. So yeah, check it out.
Well, thank you again for listening to another episode. If you enjoyed this, please share it with a friend. If you enjoyed it a lot, maybe you consider being a patron of this podcast. You can go to patreon.com/chainsawpodcast and check out our reward tiers, get access to an exclusive 90-minute interview with us, the ability to help us choose movies that we will do in the future, as well as a forum that we've set up for private internal communication between us and our patrons, and of course, access to our complete unedited episodes if that's something that's interesting to you. Also, we produce a couple mini-sodes every month, and you'll be able to access those as well if you're a patron. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our own webpage, twoguys.red40net.com. Leave us a message any one of those places and let us know what you thought of this episode and what movies you'd like us to cover in the future. Until next time, I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
With Two Guys and a Chainsaw.